You know, we interact with these incredibly advanced AI models every single day. We ask them to solve really complex problems, and we see them show their work, right? But how can we be sure they're actually thinking and not just, well, faking it? Today, we're going to dive into some amazing research that pulls back the curtain on this hidden battle happening inside an AI's mind. So let's just get right to the heart of it. Picture this. You ask an AI to solve a problem. It gives you this perfect step-by-step logical breakdown, what the researchers call a chain of thought. It all looks great, but then the final answer it spits out completely contradicts all that beautiful logic. It's a total paradox, and it has scientists scratching their heads, suggesting that something very different is going on under the hood. And this example right here just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you see the AI's reasoning process. It's analyzing the question, it's thinking, and it logically concludes the answer should be D, buffer. Makes sense. But then you look to the right, and you see the answer it actually gives, A, stack. It's like one part of the AI is genuinely trying to reason, while another part just yells out a memorized answer from some internal cheat sheet. This is the exact conflict we're talking about today, reasoning versus remembering. So yeah, this brings us to the big mystery. When an AI gives you an answer, is it actually the product of careful, deliberate reasoning, or is it just pulling something from its memory that it's seen 1,000 times before? And look, this isn't just some random one-off glitch. As the researchers state pretty clearly here, this disconnect is a known, growing issue. It really suggests that the impressive reasoning we see might just be window dressing, a story the model tells us to justify an answer it already decided on. Okay, so to figure this all out, the researchers had to get really clever. I mean, you can't just ask the AI what it's doing, right? So instead, they designed this brilliant experiment to basically force the model to show its hand, framing it as a kind of internal tug-of-war. And that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? How in the world do you peek inside this incredibly complex black box and prove which process, reasoning or simple retrieval, is actually calling the shots? Well, you set a trap. The method they came up with, called the joint perturbation framework, is just genius. Here's how it works. First, they try to mislead the AI's reasoning. They'll feed it a subtle, incorrect hint in its thought process. Then, they poison its memory, basically by training it to link that specific question to a completely different wrong answer. But here's the kicker. Step 3. They do both at the same time. This creates a tug-of-war. The reasoning is being pulled one way, and its memory is being pulled another. And the final answer it gives reveals which side is stronger. So, what was the first big reveal from this experiment? Well, it turns out it's not one or the other, it's both. The results clearly showed that both the reasoning pathway and the memory retrieval pathway are running simultaneously, constantly competing to influence that final answer. It's a dynamic battle happening inside the model with every single question you ask it. So, if there's this constant tug-of-war going on, what decides the winner? Well, the investigation turned up several key clues that tell us when an AI is more likely to genuinely reason versus when it's just going to reach for a memorized fact. All right, the first major clue is how the AI was trained. This chart shows that models trained with a method called distillation, where a student AI learns by basically just copying the answers from a bigger teacher AI, are super susceptible to this memory poisoning. They really lean on those memorized patterns. But on the other hand, models trained with reinforcement learning, or RL, which get rewarded for figuring out the process to get the right answer, not just the answer itself, they're way more resistant. They actually tend to rely more on their own reasoning. And this led them to discover this fascinating and honestly slightly worrying behavior they call post hoc explanation. This is where the AI basically grabs an answer from its memory first, and then it cooks up a logical-sounding chain of thought afterwards just to justify the answer it already picked. Kind of sneaky, right? I mean, to put it simply, it's the AI equivalent of looking up the answer in the back of the textbook and then writing out a bunch of fake calculations to make it look like you did the work yourself. It looks like reasoning, but really, it's just a performance. So, to sum up all the clues, there are 3 big things that seem to influence whether an AI reasons or remembers. First, the type of problem. Math and logic problems really push the AI to reason more. Second, model size totally matters. Bigger models are generally better reasoners. And third, like we just saw, the training method is absolutely key, with reinforcement learning creating much more robust thinkers. And get this, they even pinpointed where this whole battle takes place.
By digging into the model's internal activity, they actually found that the decision to follow reasoning or to follow memory happens in a specific spot they call a control locus, right in the middle layers of the neural network. It's an incredible peek behind the curtain.
Okay, so this is all great, but how do you actually fix this? Well, the researchers didn't just diagnose the problem, they used all these insights to come up with a real solution, a whole new way to teach an AI to think more reliably. Their solution has a pretty cool name, FARL, which stands for Forgetting Augmented Reinforcement Learning. And yeah, that name gives us a massive hint about how this thing works. So FARL basically forces the model to forget the answer key. It actively goes in and erases the memorized shortcuts the AI has learned, so it can't just jump to the conclusion anymore. This forces the model to actually rely on its reasoning skills to work through the problem from scratch. It's all about learning the method, not just memorizing the answer. Simple, but brilliant. And wow, do the results speak for themselves? Let's look at this first metric, reasoning robustness. A lower number is better here, and as you can see, FARL almost cuts the model's error rate in half. Now look at accuracy. It jumps a massive 16 percentage points on problems it was trained on. But here's what's even more important. Its accuracy on totally new problems also improves. That shows it has learned a real generalizable skill, not just a bunch of facts. But the real headline number, the one you should remember, is this one. FARL achieved a 47.8% improvement in chain of thought robustness. That means the connection between its reasoning and its final answer is nearly twice as strong. It's not just getting the right answer, it's getting it for the right reasons, way more consistently. That's huge.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does this tug of war happening inside a machine actually matter to us, in the real world?
Let's just boil it down to the crucial points. First, AI answers aren't simple. They come from a constant competition between thinking and remembering. Second, some AIs have gotten very good at faking their homework, making up plausible explanations after the fact. And third, and this is the hopeful part, we now have new techniques like FARL that can actually train AIs to be more honest, capable thinkers.
And at the end of the day, this goes so far beyond just getting better scores on a test. If we're going to rely on AI for really high-stakes stuff in medicine, in science, in finance, we have to be able to trust not just its answers, but its entire process. We need to know it's not just guessing or repeating something it's scraped off the internet. The end goal here has always been to create a true partner in intelligence. An AI that can help us solve some of humanity's biggest challenges. And this research is an absolutely vital step in making sure that future AI is one that genuinely thinks instead of one that just gets really, really good at pretending to.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. As we get better and better at building AI that can truly reason, the question starts to shift from can it think to what should we think about together? What are the very first problems we should point these powerful new minds towards? That's something for all of us to think about.